I said, Australian sprinters are very, very good. There's a lot of good ones around. Two things he has in his favour: he's brilliant speed, and he's just still a very young horse. He's only a 3-year-old. He's about to turn 4, and I think 4 and 5 will be his best times.
For the Everest Connections, I'm AP Harold. Today's very special guest is a revered Australian trainer who, since 2014, has teamed with his son Paul to form one of the world's most formidable barns. This former jockey has trained Golden Slipper winner Capitalist, dual Group 1 winners Russian Revolution and King's Legacy, Wild Ruler, Pride of Dubai, Invader, and Shooting to Win. Without further ado, let's please welcome a man who always shoots to win, as evidenced by appearances in the winner's circle in the first 2 editions of the Everest, Peter Snowden. Peter, an honor to have you with us.
My pleasure to be here. Thanks, AP.
Peter, you began your career as a jockey. How does being in the irons those many years ago impact your relationships with the men and women who ride these magnificent animals?
Yeah, I think it's a plus. Being able to ride, you have a better understanding of racing and riding and how your jockeys ride, and I think it's been a big advantage for me going forward in my training career.
Let's go back even before you wore jockey silks. The Peter Snowden file. Where were you born and where'd you grow up?
Yeah, I was born in Scone, New South Wales, country town in New South Wales. I grew up there. My mother died quite early, and I moved to a southern family, and then went back home when I was about 10 or 12, and apprentice jockey when I was 16, and started off with my father riding for the first 12 or 18 months, and went to Sydney for a 6-month stint, and back to the country and served out my apprenticeship there.
Peter, with your mom passing away at such a young age, that's a difficult thing. Hard work is needed to catch up. In horse racing, there's many disappointments. I'm guessing at this stage in your career, you look back and you tip your cap to mom.
Oh, absolutely. It's dying very early. It's sort of, you grew up pretty quickly, really. Your mum is probably your right and left hand there when you're a child, and not having her there was difficult. But I was saying, what doesn't break you makes you stronger, and that was the case with me. It's just I really wanted to do well and make my mum proud and my dad. And he passed away about 12 years ago. But no, I've been very lucky. I've achieved what I wanted to achieve, and I'm always trying to be better. And hopefully I still am now.
You've certainly done them proud, and it's neat to see the generations with your son. We'll talk more about him in a little bit. But Peter, when did you first take an interest in horse racing? Were you a little kid? Were you a teenager, a young adult?
Yeah, my father was a jockey, so I was always around horses from an early age. But I didn't really get the bug for riding until I was about probably 12 or 13. My brother was always keener than I was, but he really struggled with horses. But for me, it just seemed to come very natural, and that's why I thought I never really wanted to be a jockey at a young age. I wanted to be a train driver or a tractor driver or whatever, but not a jockey. But when I started going to stables from about 10 onwards, I started to like it, and then I started to ride. I knew there's something more than just a feeling there. It was affinity, really, and I was what other people were having trouble with. I was seeing to handle it quite comfortably. So it was just something I realised maybe I am born to do this, and I started riding work when I was 12, and became an apprentice jockey when I was 16. But I hasn't been a day go by that I've ever regretted it.
You mentioned your father was a jockey. What do you remember about his style, his attitude in the irons?
Yeah, he finished riding when I grew up. He was riding when I was born, and he gave it away when I was only about probably 3 or 4. So I don't remember much about him riding, but he rode over 600 winners, so he's quite a successful rider. It always makes it difficult to think you're going to try and be as good as your dad or be your dad, but I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to be myself and just do the best I could. And I had a fair bit of success in riding. I had trouble with my weight. I had no weight issues till I was about 18, and from 18 on, I started to I got taller, my bones got heavy, and I found it harder to stay at lighter weights. But I had fair success. Not as much as I wanted to, but I thought I had fair success when I was riding.
We're speaking on the Everest Connections with Peter Snowden, revered trainer down under in Australia. And let's stick with jockeys, but let's switch to Mazu. And jockey Sam Clipperton has been in the irons for 6 of Mazu's wins. Can you break the news here? Will Clipperton be aboard Mazu in the Everest?
Yeah, it'd be pretty hard to take him off. He's got a pretty good record on the horse, and he's come back into work now. And Sam's been down most mornings to see how he is. The association, I think, we'll be sticking with for quite a while.
What makes Sam so good?
I think he's known this horse for quite a while. He's not only rode him when he's winning, he rode him before he started to win. So he had an understanding of this horse really early. And it wasn't until we always thought that he'd be a better horse when he get gelded. And so the comparison from when he was a colt to when he now is a gelding is two different parallels, really. And Sam's been aboard him and knows that, he feels that in the horse. And I think that understanding he has with him is crucial to his chance of winning a race like the Everest, that's for sure.
You mentioned parallels. Mazu, like Redzel, won the Doomben 10,000. At this point in Mazu's career, what parallels do you see between the two horses?
They're similar. Both very fast horses. Both like horses like the leader and do their work from the front. I just think with Mazu, there's probably a little more upside to him because I think he's going to get further. I think 7 furlongs a mile won't be beyond him. But at the moment now, while he's winning these shorter trips, will stay where we are now. But they're similar, but slightly different in character. Redzel was a very, very laid-back horse. Mazu is very full-on, and that's the reason why we gelled him. But he's better, but he's still not the complete package yet. He's still a bit in a hurry to do things, and that's to get to a good level, you've got to tick every box, and that means relaxing in races so you can finish better rather than sort of going out and doing too much too early and run out of gas. So. He's getting there, and he got to a Group 1 last preparation, which is great to see because I'm sure there's further improvement to come from the horse.
Peter, when the average guy or gal thinks about the gamble of horse racing, they're thinking about the wagering window. But in your line of work and with ownership, you think about purchasing these horses. And Mazu was purchased as a yearling. There's obviously a lot of risk-reward speculation in buying such a young horse. What has the syndicate ownership told you about why they decided to go ahead and make that, in hindsight, brilliant move to pull the trigger and purchase Mazu?
He was a cheap buy, really, in comparison to yearlings nowadays. 120,000, I think he was, which is it's a lower end of the market. The people that bought this bloke, Triple Crown, they're the syndicators we train mostly for. They're good guys. They do a lot of research and a lot of do line breeding and niches and things that work. And with Maurice being such a fantastic racehorse, it was no surprise to see or take a punt with first season he was at the time when they bought him, first season sire. But he's a good, nice, athletic individual with a good female pedigree to him, but also very strong through the Maurice line. And we're quite keen on him because we all spoke about him that he's such a fantastic horse. And the Japanese horses, the stallions there, I think they're superior to anywhere because they just the standard stud. They got to tick every box. They can't have wind issues or bleeding issues. They've got to be 100% sound and be multiple Group 1 winners. And that's what this horse was. He was a very, very good horse. So it's no surprise to see what he's doing here in Australia for sure.
Our guest on the Everest Connections is revered Australian trainer Peter Snowden. Appreciate him being with us. And the world has become in many ways a smaller place with the internet and cell phones and air travel, but it's still a big place. Mazu, of course, has Japanese bloodlines. Have you given any thought to the possibility, if the right opportunity arose, to taking him to race in the land of the rising sun?
There'll be no rising sun for us. We're happy to stay here. Prize money here in Australia is fantastic. And look, you're right. The world is getting a smaller place now because Australian horses are visiting overseas. As overseas horses coming to Australia now, it's a common occurrence now. So one thing was just a pie in the sky dream. Now it's a reality, and more often than not, it's done. But this particular horse, he'll stay here. There's the sprinting races here in Australia are second to none. They're the best horses and the best prize money in the world. So, and being a gelding too, he's got nothing to prove. He isn't going to make a name for himself at the start or anything. He's just a racehorse that's going to enjoy racing here.
It sounds like that's a Japanese import that's going to stay down under for the time being. Peter, Mazu's current campaign is certainly impressive. He takes what he's given and he wins. He's stalked and pounced. He's been driven up the rail and closed in company to get up. His versatility, how rare is that trait?
Oh, it's good to have. Being able to ride him from the front or the back is a big thing. And now he's going to get up in class, which it's very, very difficult. As I said, Australian sprinters are very, very good. There's a lot of good ones around. two things he has in his favour. He's brilliant speed, and he's just still a very young horse. He's only a 3-year-old. He's about to turn 4, and I think 4 and 5 will be his best times. Sprinters don't last long at the top. It's very hard to stay competitive at an older age for sprinters, because it's all pure power, and it's very taxing on the horses. But this guy, I think his 4 and 5-year-old time will be his best time.
Peter, of course, the Everest obviously is a sprint. How does training a horse for 1,200 meters differ from the longer races?
Oh, it's different. It's shorter, sharper work. But they're two different things, really. It's this bloke is just a sheer sprinter. I said earlier he might stretch out to a mile. I'll say that because the more this horse relaxes, the better he's going to get. The more he's going to run, and I think he's showing signs of that now. But I'm sure later on, I think up to a mile shouldn't be a problem to him.
Peter, you've been around the sport of kings for a long time, 3 generations at least in your family. But the selling of 12 slots for a race, that's unusual, if not unique. Is this something you'd like to see with premier races of other distances, be it in Australia or other nations?
I think it's a good concept here. I think it's very good. The only thing I might say is it's just a little bit top heavy. The prize money is very big, huge money. Our prize money generally is pretty good. But when you get races that are worth 15 million to the winner, that's a lot of money. And there again, there's probably other places where it could be spread around a bit more. But it's a good concept. It certainly gathered Australian racing big time. It was. I don't think it was even slow to kick off. It came from an American idea, but it sort of got momentum quickly. And the first edition was big, but it has got bigger and bigger every year, and to the point now it's worldwide. So we're getting horses. Only just recently talking about Coolmore sending 2 over. There's an American horse thinking about coming here. So it's on the world stage now. So it is a big concept.
Our guest on the Everest Connections is Peter Snowden, one of the top trainers not only in Australia but the world over. Let's talk, though, Peter, Australian horse racing, where syndication appears especially prominent on the island continent. What do you see as the pros and cons of working for a syndicate versus an individual owner?
For me, it doesn't matter. Whoever owns a horse, whether it be one person or 100 people, it's the same thing, really. There's a lot of reports go out, and the way they're set up now, you just do voicemails or emails. They're sent to individual owners very quickly. It's the same as you would a one-person owner. But with one person owning it, it's just you've only got one person to please. The syndicate is a few more to please, but the way they run now, and the syndicate manage those people, it's not such a big thing at all.
Peter, what should folks, whether they be in Europe, the States, the Middle East, anywhere else in the world, know about horse racing in Australia that perhaps they do not?
Yeah, it's getting big now. With racing now, it's worldwide. You pick up every day on TV, there's races somewhere. On the Sky channels, they're broadcasting 24/7. Ladbrokes, they're big at promoting racing and with bookmaking, and you see races replayed everywhere. It's very hard to go out a day without seeing a race somewhere. And in any country, whether it be we get Japanese racing here, we get English, Irish racing, American racing. It's every continent. It's wall to wall. So I think Australia's right up there. The turnout is always huge. So I think it's well recognised and well received. And the further proof to that is just the latest meeting out in England. One of their best sprinters went over there and won over there. So when you showcase Australian horses go overseas and win, it's always a big plus.
Yeah, let's follow up on that. Nature's Trip went over to the old country and won, and won convincingly. How much pride collectively trainers, owners, jockeys, staff, fans take in that incredible display of horsepower?
Yeah, no, it's a big thing to take a horse that far overseas, but it also gives everyone in racing a kick to see the Australian horses win, just to show you just how strong they are. And that horse he's a good sprinter, but he's also 7-year-old. So to my way of thinking, he's been a good horse, but it's going to be very, very hard for him to keep racing at this top level.
Peter, if you've got a horse, let's say in the U.S., Keeneland in Kentucky, and you want to take him to Royal Ascot, it's a long trip, but not nearly as long as shipping him from down under to Metro London. How does that impact the decision when it's so far away and so expensive and takes so much toll potentially on the horse?
Yeah, no, it's a big gamble. The two horses that Chris Waller took this year, one was the horse that won, plus another one was a Coolmore horse, him being a colt. He's got residual value there if he can win in dual hemispheres. So that was there's a bit of reasoning of that. But for a gelding, and as I said, Mazu's a gelding, there's no real, for the amount of problems that can, like it's a 24-hour flight. That's a long time for a horse to be on their feet. It's very difficult for them. Not all horses handle it. Quite often they get travel sickness, which is a big problem when you get on the other side. So there's a lot of issues to take into account. It's not just going out there and running. There's a lot involved in it, as most people in racing do know. But going back to that meeting at Ascot, that was phenomenal. Like it's a meeting. It's showcased all around the world, and to have an Australian horse win there was a big plus for everyone in racing back here.
It is a long flight. I think the only thing that encourages me is it's not quite as long as the original European settlers when they went from England to Botany Bay a few hundred years ago, huh?
And mind you, when we go on a plane, we can go turn to the left and lay down all day. For a horse that goes, he's got to stand up the whole way. So it's a lot harder for them.
Peter, we'll get into some more of this in our next interview with you when we talk about Redzel, but I wanted to touch on, of course, horse racing is ultimately about people. The horses can't train one another, at least actively. And as the trainer, you're that middle guy between the jockey and ownership. What is your race day routine? At what point do you hand it over to the jockey and step back?
When you put them on the enclosure, for me, I'm with them morning, during the day, at the races, settle them up, I meet them in enclosure. Once we leave the jock up, he takes over from there. But there's a lot of work goes on between that, and quite often the jockeys that ride our horses ride them work as well, so they know them. They don't just go to the race and get on the first time. They quite often they know them from back home and during track work. So I think that's important. That local feel you get on riding them is a lot different to trying to tell someone for 15 minutes before they get on a horse how to ride a horse. But they've been on them and know the horse, how they work, how they feel. It's a lot easier conversation than trying to tell them right from the get-go from knowing nothing about the horse, never been on them before. So it's very beneficial if your riders do ride your horses in the track work. It's a big plus for the team.
That you're a horse trainer. It's such an exotic job. What are some of the reactions folks have to that?
Well, they'll ask for a tip. I always say the same thing. Work hard, be good to your mother. You can't lose.
Those are good. And finally, Peter, for a young person, a boy or a girl who's looking to perhaps get into the sport of kings, maybe they're too big to be a jockey. They're not quite affluent enough yet to be an owner. They don't want to be a suit upstairs. They want to be a trainer. Could you give us some tips for some of the things they're going to need to do to give themselves a chance to compete in your wonderful sport?
You got to love the sport more than anything else. It's not a job. It's never a job. It's a lifestyle. It's a way of life. And it has to be your way of life 24/7. It's just it's very intense. There's a lot of heartache. But if you really, really love something, you really want to get there, I'd say go for your life. But be prepared to. There's a lot of speed bumps along the way. But if you really like it, if you're really passionate about something, you go hard at it and you'll do well at it.
Peter Snowden, thank you so much for your time. The Everest Connections, it was wonderful to have you. Folks, please stay tuned. We've got another interview coming up. You'll want to check with us as we will delve into the winner of the first two Everests, that's Redzel, and also talk a little bit about the family connection we learned in this interview about Peter's father, but Peter's son, Paul, is also a very important part of his team. Peter Snowden, thank you so much for joining us on the Everest Connections.
You're welcome. Thank you.